Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew, just a quick little moment before we drop into today's guest episode to remind you about the Soft Summer Power Healing Sessions, as well as the Remote Summer Healing Special. Both of these offers are running through the month of July. The remote healings will be running through August into September as well. And they're both designed to really support you to be able to sink into summer, to soak in all the amazing magic that this season has to offer, to find clarity and cultivate presence and peace and so much joy. The Soft Summer Power Session is a half-day VIP experience, 3 hours one-on-one together, followed by 2 weeks of WhatsApp voice note support, unlimited access to me for 2 weeks, and a follow-up call. And the Summer Healing Special is bi-monthly, so twice a month, remote healings. These happen while you go about your day, intended to support you without you having to add another thing to your busy schedule. If you're curious about either of these, come shoot me a message over on Instagram at I am Eileen March, or send me an email, eileen@myluminouslife.ca, and I'll send along all the details. There's no pressure to commit. If you're curious, please just ask the question. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hey Woo Crew, welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host Eileen, and I'm joined today by Melanie Weller. Melanie is known as the Body Whisperer. She's a physical therapist and athletic trainer with 30 years of experience specializing in complex cases. Through her study of astrology and celestial patterns, Melanie discovered that our bodies function as biological clocks mirroring the zodiac's architecture, with wellness dependent on synchronizing our nervous system with cosmic rhythms. Now leading the Resilience Revolution, Melanie advocates for timestamps, a transformative methodology that unites ancient wisdom with modern science to build spiritual resilience. She teaches, speaks, and practices this approach as the foundation for all forms of human resilience. Welcome to the show, Melanie. I'm so delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much, Eileen. I'm so delighted to be here. Your podcast reflects my heart. So much. I love this so much. And everybody's way more woo than they're willing to admit, or even the science people are like way more woo than they admit. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting when I was reading your bio and what you talk about. I was like, oh, this is going to be a really good conversation. And I love that you say everybody's more woo than they're willing to admit, because part of my story, as my listeners will know, is that I was an atheist for up until about 5 years ago now. And I've really kind of obviously come full circle. And so I always love to start my conversations with guests by asking about their own journey with spirituality and how they came to it, if you've always been spiritual, and how it informs the work that you do now.
Yeah, I will say I've definitely always been spiritual at some level. But I grew up, my struggle with it, my church wasn't fundamentalist or authoritarian or anything like that, but the way that my parents applied it at home was much more so. So I grew up with authoritarian parents with very firm, fixed beliefs around the religion and spirituality. And then I was a Navy wife for 20 years. And so then I had that authoritarian structure over me. And then in my early 40s, Well, I will say along the way, like I always straddled the science and the woo professionally in my physical therapy practice. Like I would take very evidence-based classes, and I certainly come out of, evidence-based medicine. And but then I would take more osteopathic classes where you learned how to mobilize organs and release arteries and veins and things like that, which is just like not, especially 25, 30 years ago, was way out of the box, compared to what it is now.
I love osteopaths. They're my favorite
Yeah,
body
osteopaths are awesome.
practitioners.
Yeah. And so I have I've always had this very osteopathic kind of approach to my practice, and with these very gentle techniques, and it really saved. I have silly flexible fingers and had finger tendonitis the first few years I was out of physical therapy school, and like I can't do soft tissue mobilization the way some people can because my finger stability just isn't there.
Right.
And so I learned these gentle techniques, and I trained with nationally and internationally renowned experts. I collected credentials and certifications like some people collect fine wines. And really getting people better was my drug of choice, and it's still thrilling when it happens. And I had an amazing success story yesterday that just like lit me up. Even so, still to this day, it's super fun for me. But in my early 40s, my life fell apart and started not making any sense. And I had a health crisis, a marriage crisis, and a lawsuit crisis all in very close proximity. And it was very evident to me. I was like, okay, well, if I lose my license, what am I going to do? Like, clearly the universe wants me to do something else. And I always kind of had this split personality with my business that, it's like, the front was like, all the credentials and everything. But people came to me for my soft skills, and for my, a little bit for my medical intuition or my ability to kind of synthesize the chakras and the spiritual underpinnings of their physical dysfunction with the evidence-based piece.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, I had a patient walk into my office that had his suicide planned for that evening. And physical therapy is not the go-to, professional for suicide. But he was living in a nightmare of hallucinations that he couldn't get out of. And other practitioners that were more appropriate for him to see had turned him away. And we had a mutual contact. I thought he was like probably coming to see me for back pain because she called me up and was like, can you fit him in today? I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. It just worked out. And I didn't know that I could help him, but my clinical expertise was treating the vagus nerve as a pinched nerve in the body. And I got him set up and referred out. And I thought, okay, I'll decompress his vagus nerve and see what happens. Like I couldn't just send him out the door without laying my hands on him.
Something. Yeah.
And 90 minutes later, he walked out 90% better. And I walked out with my fearless presence that day. And fearless presence has been part of my brand for a long time now. And since then, I've really been on this mission to help people unite science and spirituality. Like I knew I had to, I showed up with so much more than my clinical skills that day. I showed up fully with my intuition, with my heart, the science. I showed up with the metaphysics, and a miracle happened. And it's very easy for me to, when I reflect back on that whole journey, to say that time had stopped in his body. That and his body was basically telling his brain it was dead. And I can put objective data to this, but if I was going to thread it in a story, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
And so then he had this behavioral drive to match that on the outside.
Right.
And so in the midst of this crisis, I turned to astrology. And what I realized is that in all of the angles of the cosmos and in all of the archetypes of astrology, they are literal anatomical representations of our anatomy. We are literally, when I think about being made in the image of God, we are, and I mean this in the most literal, geometric, hardcore way, we are made in the image of the zodiac.
Okay. I want to know more. I want to know, can you give me like a tangible
Absolutely. Yeah. So I created, so part of me showing up fully was bringing this to the table
this lens to the table.
This, you know, and whether or not you believe in astrology, the zodiac is a clock.
Right.
You know, so I have this favorite picture from an anatomy book that I got shortly after graduating from PT school because it supported a bunch of courses that I was taking. They referenced the images, so I wanted that particular set of anatomy books. And it's this favorite image that I've showed patients ever since I've had it because I just think it's such a cool image. It's an MRI of the ventricles of the brain, and the ventricles make cerebral spinal fluid, which bathes and cushions our brain and spinal cord. It washes our brain at night when we sleep. And the first time I looked at that to show it to someone after I had been studying astrology to figure out why my life was upside down, I went, oh, that looks just like the ram's horns that represent Aries. And in astrology, Aries rules the head. And I was like, where's the rest of it? And it is hidden in plain sight in the order of the zodiac from head to toe.
Oh, I just got full body chills. I love this.
So Taurus rules the throat, and our throat anatomy looks like the Taurus bull. Leo rules the heart, and our aortic arches are the same shape as the symbol for Leo. Libra rules the kidneys, and your kidneys sit in your low back like a set of scales, that, you know, which is the symbol for Libra. And beyond that, the populations, at least in most Western society that I've researched, certainly in the U.S. and Australia, the populations with the highest levels of social injustice have the highest levels of kidney disease. So we embody the stress of injustice at the level of the kidneys, however we experience it.
Right.
And so as a stress management expert, that was kind of my, you know, it's like, oh, this all makes sense. Like, I know if your kidneys aren't moving right, or you're coming to me with some underlying kidney disease, there's some injustice going on in your life.
Right.
And Saturn rules the bones, and your long bones are oriented in concentric circles, just like Saturn's rings. Your knees look like the Capricorn goat that Saturn rules. Your feet look like the Pisces fish. On my website, which is my name, melanieweller.com, there's a free zodiac and the vagus nerve workbook that talks, like, there's the pictures and everything, so people can go grab that.
Fun.
And there's exercises to go through, because working with how the vagus nerve is a pinched nerve in the body for so many years.
So when you say it's a pinched nerve, you mean like it's pinched?
It is mechanically pinched. So your vagus nerve goes all the way from your brainstem down to the pelvis, and women it innervates the cervix.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, goes pretty much the whole length of your torso. And it goes to your vocal cords, your heart, and your digestive system. It helps you absorb nutrients and water. We all know when our vagus nerve isn't working right, because if you think about that proverbial stage fright response, then you get that lump in your throat, and your palms sweat, and your heart's racing, and your stomach is churning. That all happens because your vagus nerve got dialed down, and your fight and flight system got dialed up.
Yeah.
And so I took all of this zodiacal information and basically created a form of, I could easily call it energy medicine, but it's really more rooted in treating the architecture, like the architecture of life, period.
Right. It's almost like an awareness.
I think what I'm really doing is treating consciousness.
Right. Yeah.
Itself.
Like
I think that's really what I'm doing. But I could talk. Yeah. So when you get this, like, if your zodiacal skeleton, you know, the way that we all are made in the image of the zodiac in this same way, but we're all born at different times. So our planets in our own horoscopes are in different places, and certainly they're in different places in the moment, you know, in the now, in the sky.
Yeah.
From when we were born. But if your zodiacal skeleton isn't solid enough, or it's very hard to hang your personal planets on it.
Right. So I'm curious, when you say if your zodiacal skeleton isn't solid enough, do you mean if there's misalignments, or if there's like inflammation, or if they're like what are you speaking
like all
to
of
there?
that? Like, and this is certainly an integration of, I think, my own intuitive skills. Like when I put my hands on somebody's head, I just ask their bodies to show me what their ram's horns look like. And if their ram's horns are wonky, I put them back. You know, we do some, I mean, there's a few ways to do it, but like basically, you know, like we get it all in order so that it's nice and organized.
Yeah.
You know, and I certainly didn't throw away all my osteopathic skills. Like I still pull those out, but treating this relationship of the nervous system to solar system or the body to the sky, I have found gets me the same or better objective results with patients faster than all of my evidence-based techniques.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's so many things flagging for me. This happens every time I have a good conversation where I'm like, I want to ask this and I want to go down this path and then this path over here. But a few of the things that really just kind of stuck out to me about your story, one is that sense of, you know, people were coming to you for your hands-on skill, your evidence-based knowledge. But as with all of the best care providers, body workers, they were coming to you for so much more. And I think it's so special to be able to access that other layer of understanding and healing ability and consciousness, almost, to be able to help those that need it in the best way. And there is that sense that when we open ourselves to that connection, to our intuition, to the energetic body as well as the physical body, and can trust the messages that are coming through for us, that we do get to help people, like, in a way, quantum leap their healing, right? They access an ability within them to heal at a rate that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, and we're ignoring that spiritual level, which so much of Western medicine just ignores the spiritual
absolutely.
level
Well, and the
entirely.
research now on spirituality is that
It's huge.
There's nothing, statistically, nothing comes close to it from its protective and rehabilitative benefits in mental health. And it is a core component of longevity in all of the blue zones. You know, like regularly participating, like having a spiritual practice adds 4 to 14 years to your life.
That's incredible. I've not heard that stat. It doesn't surprise me because it feels really true, but it's...
Yeah, like it's incredible. And even spiritually strong adolescents are up to 75% likely to experience clinical depression and 40 to 80% less likely to develop substance dependence or abuse.
Wow.
If your mother was spiritual, with or without being religious, you are super protected against mental health issues. Like you're about 80% protected against depression.
Wow.
And being religious doesn't provide these protective benefits. You can be religious and spiritual, but not just religious. And so then what's the difference? And the easy answer, and this is how they differentiate it in the research, is that spirituality is your relationship with your inner authority. Religion is your relationship with external authority.
Oh, that's, yep. It's so good. It's so good. I speak so often to that, like, everything you need is within you. We're so used to, as a culture, we're so used to and told to externalize our power, right? We externalize, we seek for the sources of power, for validation, for information, always seeking outside of us. And everything that we need is right here.
Absolutely. Well, and I like to also think of it in a more integrated term, like in many Native American tribes, they had the principle of reciprocity, that like you give to the earth and the earth gives back to you. And I think thinking of it a little, because you have to live with the external world anyway, but how can it be this reciprocal, harmonious relationship rather than this me versus it?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Or me seeking to extract from it. Which I think
absolutely.
is such a
absolutely.
Really
and the other really exciting thing, I've been working with the body as this zodiacal clock for 12 or 14 years now, and is that the science now says that time perception and processing is the common thread between mental health diagnoses, neurological diagnoses, and orthopedic diagnoses. And so when we are injured, in the research for mental health people, like certain diagnoses will like overestimate a time task or underestimate it.
Right. Okay.
Or or they might not function as well on a timing task. Like they might do it too fast or too slow.
Right.
And certainly the easiest way, it's very easy to understand in the orthopedic world, because like if you sprain your ankle or you watch your favorite football or soccer player get blow out their ACL on the field, like they mistimed their step.
Right.
You know, there was a misfiring,
Right.
you know, like the coordination wasn't there. Or even like a car accident is kind of a mistimed event.
Like reaction time or response,
Exactly.
body response.
All of that kind of stuff. Right. And so it's all about time and timing. But the more organized your time perception and processing is, the more accurate it is.
Right.
And the same parts of the brain that you would rehabilitate for trauma, for the most part, you know, or I will say overwhelmingly, really, also are involved in time perception and processing. And I'm really passionate, you know, I come out of the trauma-informed world, but I really think we need to be time-informed and not trauma-informed. Because we will never sell trauma-informed care to the rest of the world because not everybody wants to deal with their trauma. But people would like to have a different relationship with their time. More me time, more family time, more downtime. Yeah. You know, more together time, more health time or play time or whatever it is. And we can like walk around all the houses of the zodiac and all the archetypes and come up with all the reasons. And we know in astrology, Leo rules the heart, and it's also associated with play. And we all know reflexively that if we want to be more playful, that takes a lighter heart, or that, you know, that takes a more joyful heart. So you can do heart level exercises to increase your joy. Like people are already doing this. This isn't, you know, like it all matches, but you can be very prescriptive about how that ends up getting applied to the body. And the other thing that I see a lot in the trauma-informed world, you know, are people with large followings on Instagram, basically telling everybody that every crumb of their existence is a trauma response.
Right.
And
not helpful.
I don't think that's not helpful. That doesn't really, you know, and it's very Western mindset to think of everything as a trauma response and to think of everything as about protection. And in Eastern philosophy, like through India, they would say more that we are pleasure-seeking beings.
Right.
You know, and pleasure-seeking and fear-avoiding can be two sides of the same coin.
Yeah,
but it's vastly
where
different
the
mindset.
Matters. Yeah. Yes, the mindset. Like
you know, to be like, oh, where can I find pleasure versus where am I avoiding trauma? You know, and I think that like the trauma-informed work is really good and it's important. And, you know, when you're in an acute situation, like you need people that can just kind of give you a hard, like, do this, do that. Like it doesn't have to be spiritual or emotional or anything in the moment to really always rein people in. But I just really see the trauma-informed paradigm perpetuating trauma very unintentionally in a lot of situations. And what my patients tell me about the being time, you know, talking about time, is they feel like it becomes a little bit less personal, like there's not so much fault or guilt associated with talking about it.
Yeah. So how do you help your patients or clients reconfigure their relationship with time? Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, I think getting their clock. Well, I mean, I think I think we're kind of like fish that don't know the water exists. You know, like we're swimming in time.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, some of the fish know the water exists because like the dolphins will come jump up, you know,
right,
and whatnot. But I think most fish don't really know the water exists. You know, it's just because they're swimming in it. And I understand all the constructs about time, but I think there's an element of time that like we're moving through time and time is moving through us and everything's a clock and you're just all of these different cycles are happening concurrently. But when time gets stuck in your body or gets warped as it moves through your body, that can look like, it can certainly look like a mental health diagnosis. It can look like back pain. It can look like neck pain, you know, some kind of orthopedic diagnosis. It can look like an eating disorder. It can look like Parkinson's disease, you know, all of these things. And so I take people's horoscopes and I look at them two different ways to kind of see where the rub in their system is, like where that compression point is happening. And I can use their chart to then help direct their exercises, because when you soften the energies in different places, it can make a really big difference. For example, like I'm Cancer rising with an Aries sun and moon. And so Cancer rules the breasts. and Aries rules the head. I respond beautifully to all head exercises, like eye exercises, tongue exercises, things like sound, and to really chest level things. And in my 20s, I would have told you that when I died, I was going to die of a heart attack, and it was going to happen right here in my chest, in that cancer ruled part of the body. And so so I use it a little bit to guide what exercises I might choose for somebody, or like what I know that they'll probably respond best to.
Right.
Or if they have a cluster of planets in one small section of their chart, if I get somebody with like 6 planets in Virgo, like they need some digestive stuff, but they also need, like I often might go to the feet, like on the opposite end. Go to Pisces is opposite of that and rules the feet, and just use it to balance. And it's really interesting how it balances it all out. And foot drills and exercises are great because your feet are mapped very centrally in your brain, and it's all about you. It brings you back to yourself. When people are too like scattered and taking care of everyone else, like they sometimes need a little more
pulling back their
pull it
energy
all back in
a lot of ways. Yeah.
And so the neurology matches with the way that you would think about it astrologically too. I saw somebody yesterday that came in and acute sciatic pain, really, really uncomfortable. And Mars was opposite where Mars was in his chart. And Mars is currently in Leo, which rules the spine. I'm like, oh, yeah, like his chart just read spine inflammation all over it. I was like, okay, like we got to make some Mars happy. He had already been to 5 or 10 other people to try and get out of this acute pain that hadn't worked. And my osteopathic training really taught me very early on how, like, what's happening with those back pain patients that aren't getting better. And so I did a little bit more of that with him. And he's texted me like he woke up today and could move better than he'd been able to move in like a month, And so like it's been like he's still not trusting that it's going to get better.
Right, fair.
And I only saw him once, so, like he probably needs another visitor too, like to be honest. But like I know what this is, and we just spent a lot of time digging in. Like I had his body show me what's his relationship with Mars, and when that is feeling lots of tension, it's like, no, we're going to harmonize this,
right?
So that Mars isn't creating all this inflammation. And he works at a medical office that does IV vitamin C. Like he has access to the best anti-inflammatory strategies that exist, and it still wasn't getting better.
Right. Yeah. It's always so interesting and back is such a big, a lot of people suffer from back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, in our discs, like there's 47 degrees between the pole stars that the Earth orients towards over thousands of years, and our vagus nerves, like we have one on each side, and basically like that angle relative to where your spinal cord comes out is 47 degrees, and normal rotation in your upper neck is 47 degrees. Your anterior cruciate ligaments in your knees sit at 47 degrees, and your disc tissue sits at like a 45, 47 degree angle in your back. They're alternating layers that are diagonal like that.
Right. Wow.
And so
cool.
Those angles in which we were made, I call them critical angles, but like those angles have to be right for things to work well in your body. And I think that when we get pain and stuff like that, it is an opportunity to break a cycle. And we do have hard times. Like I will tell you, Neptune through Pisces gave me a lot of foot pain, but it was also, my mother has had foot issues. My grandmother had foot issues. It was an opportunity also to break this cycle.
Ancestral cycle. Lineage healing. It's really neat. It's very interesting when having embarked on a much more spiritual life and curiosity about the energetics behind things. Now when I get pain or have something flare in my body, it's always like, okay, what can I do to alleviate it? But also, okay, where is it? What's the spiritual significance? What's going on? Like, what's the deeper level here? Why I keep having the same back injury, and it's on the one side, and it keeps happening. And so that curiosity of playing with like what's going on below the physical, because there is physical, but there is
absolutely right. And I don't want to minimize, the physical stuff gets very real for people.
It didn't sound like you were minimizing it by any means.
Right. And, our brains are 80% input from our bodies. So our bodies are so deeply informing our brains about what we're doing. Like when you have back pain, you're really moving like somebody that has back pain, or you're moving like somebody that has what you have, and what would it be like to move like somebody that doesn't have back pain? And I learned this really profoundly a number of years ago when I had an acute episode of back pain, and I could not walk from my bedroom to my kitchen, but I could dance. I could like shimmy down the hallway.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like this thing doesn't cause any pain, but if I try to walk like I normally walk, it's awful.
Yeah. Very interesting. There's so many curious threads, and I love the way you said that our bodies are constantly informing our brains. I think it's such a neat progression of cultural awareness and healing modalities that the somatic is really becoming more and more prevalent, and that body wisdom and the knowledge that's there is starting to come back. For so long, our culture has been really, mind over matter. Critical rational thought over embodied sensation.
I will tell you, virtually every somatic exercise that I've ever seen is an exercise I learned in physical therapy school, or working with brain injury patients or vestibular patients, or
and the connection is just finally
like it's all there.
And adding that spiritual layer too, because often in the physical therapy realm it's just
it's
physical,
just mechanical,
right? And so that's where the somatic therapy practices have been a beautiful kind of addition into the cultural discussion, let's say.
Well, yes. And we used to get all sorts of somatic regulation out of going to spiritual services. Like church is an incredible series of somatic practices that you're singing, and you're shaking hands, and you're looking at your hymnal and then up at the altar. So you're looking near and far and near and far, and there's smells and bells and sometimes dancing. That's vestibular stimulation, right? And get big movements, and like big movements increase your dopamine. People that have Parkinson's disease go into therapeutic programs where they have them do big movements because it helps them increase their dopamine, and they move amazingly better. I mean, there's plenty of research on this now, and a lot of us play really small, and we keep our voices in a pretty narrow range. And like if you can't move your voice through a full 3 octaves very easily, that can go with having bladder incontinence. If somebody comes to me and has a leaky bladder, there's research on this too. When you get them to exercise their voice and be able to read Little Red Riding Hood and do the voices of like Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf and, and everything in between, then the pressure on their bladder goes away.
Yeah. Well, and all those pelvic floor muscles are directly linked with throat and jaw. I was a midwife prior to this current career, and so that was always all through labor, release your jaw every time that was a contraction, because it directly correlated with speed of dilation.
I love that.
Just let go.
Oh, I love that so much. I've thought a lot about getting my vagus nerve decompression exercises into labor and delivery, and I think even breastfeeding, so many people really struggle with making enough milk and whatnot, and that's such a nervous system regulation thing. And with the right exercises, and it's so overwhelming to have a baby in our society. Like we don't have
the support
structure to make it work, and it can just be so lonely and so stressful. But bringing the astrology and the archetype into it starts to make it fun and relatable. And even if you just, we're going to take all the science out of it and consider it play, we transform faster through play than we do through any other way.
Yeah, it's how we learn best.
Stories
and play. Yeah.
And so even if you're just going to approach it from like, okay, I'm going to pretend this is part of my body, or I'm going to walk like, what is it to walk like a mother and walk like a father and walk like a warrior and walk like an oracle and like all of these different archetypes, right? Which is basically what and astrology and the hero's journey are the same thing. And there's so much great research on like Jungian archetypes and on the hero's journey, and it's all the same thing. We think we're so clever in so many ways, but even when I look at a 12-step program, it's made in the image of the zodiac.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a sense of so many folks who are creative, and so whoever came up with the 12-step program, that was an act of creation, but so often it is channeled, right? We hear all the great artists and writers, and they say that it didn't come from me. It came from outside
I
of
would
me,
say
and I
this
was just
about
the
the
channel.
zodiac. Like, I can't believe that this isn't like all over the place everywhere, because it is so obvious to me, in just, I call it our fundamental science hidden in plain sight.
Yeah,
And then I
love that.
learned after I had been doing this that in Vedic astrology, like or through the Vedas, that some people have really done this. Like our brainstem and cerebellum look like the Hindu deity Ganesh, and Ganesh is the remover of obstacles, and that's basically what your brainstem and cerebellum do. And
Right.
Lakshmi's 4 arms represent the 4 chambers of your heart, and Durga's 8 arms are the nerves as they come out of your sacral plexus. And it's really powerful to use that paradigm too. I integrate it all. But I think we are really made of, we're made of stardust scientifically, but our stardust has a story. Like, we're really made of story, and we're storytellers, and all of these stories live inside of us, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such powerful stuff. Such powerful stuff. Oh, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. But I'm really curious, for folks who are interested in the work you do, what you offer, how do people connect with you? How do people work with you? And I know some of your work is in person, but I am guessing you also
I do
offer
stuff online also.
support.
Yeah. I actually, well, the easiest thing to do is to go to my website, melanieweller.com. I know this is coming out in July, and very shortly after this gets released, I have a retreat happening outside of Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm teaching this timestamps methodology, and it's following on a Mary Magdalene retreat. So it's part of the timestamps is really the neurology of miracles and transcending time. And I have another retreat at the end of September to the south of France.
Oh, beautiful.
But yes, I am on Substack, and for my paid subscribers, I do monthly events, and I'm definitely going to be teaching this timestamps program more online throughout the year and having more opportunities. But I do think some of the hands-on techniques they're just better to teach in person.
Right.
And I teach a lot of clinicians, but I think we all get to know how to heal our families and heal ourselves. So I don't, I welcome other people into the classes as well. And there will be things like energy medicine for astrologers and whatnot coming, because I work with people remotely too. And I'm very good at grabbing onto the body from, somebody else's body from afar. And that's like, as somebody who you're coming out of the medical system, there's so many beautiful ways to heal. And I think that I'm obviously partial to this one because I think it's just so core to our existence.
Yeah. It feels like a foundational piece for sure, the way you describe it.
And it works.
And
it really enhances, even if you have to go through hardcore medical things, it makes everything else work better. It really doesn't compete with it. It makes all of your other interventions
more effective. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, and it sounds like you have a really incredible free resource as well. The handout with the mapping, the
zodiac and the vagus nerve workbook is there. I have lots of free resources. There's an email series called Sacred Stomp. I know, but just go to my website, melanieweller.com. There's lots there. Reach out to me. Like, I'm not hard to find.
Lovely. Yeah. And all of the links will, of course, be below in the show notes. Are there any final words of wisdom, messages, anything you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Yes. I think the truest way that time works relative to our bodies is encapsulated in a proverb from a tribe in the Andes Mountains. And they say that your future is behind you, propelling you forward, and your past is in front of you, waiting for you to make peace with it and clear your way. And we all think that our future is kind of our prey, that we have to chase it. And can you just let your future catch you? Like, you're really its prey.
That's
and
beautiful.
Can you lean into that support of the universe and let it carry you where you need to be?
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's a lovely reconceptualization of time and our place in it, for sure. Thank you so much for being my guest today. This was a wonderful conversation. I learned so much. I can't wait to go download that resource and learn even more. I'm so curious about my own astrology and where it lands in my body. And of course, Woo Crew, reach out to Melanie, find her and the links below in the show notes. And as always, if you liked this episode, please don't forget to rate, review, comment, subscribe, all the things, all the platforms, wherever you're listening to this. And I'll be back here with you once again next week. Thanks so much, Melanie.
Thank you, Eileen.
Bye for now.